of why you would get resentful. It's like, well, culture's arrayed against you, so you're the target of tyrannical forces that are beyond your control. They're arbitrary. They don't work in your interest, at least not entirely. And the more eccentric you are, let's say, the more tyrannical culture will be to you. And so you're stuck with that, and then nature conspires to destroy you constantly and is going to do that with pain and anxiety and aging. And then there's the uncontrollability and darkness of your own psyche. And everyone faces those. Now, we face the positive elements of those too, the beneficence of culture, the beauty of nature, the glory of the human spirit. That's there as well. You have reasons to be deceitful, resentful, and arrogant, but it's not a good game unless you want to produce hell. We have to strive not to be wretched. There's something that doesn't seem fair about that. Why couldn't we just be happy being who and what we are? Why is it that we're punished if we don't strive? Well, I don't know. We're negentropic organisms, right? I mean, we have to maintain this incredible complexity in the face of a dissipating universe. It requires effort. It's the second law of thermodynamics, I believe. That's why we have to strive. Well, why is the world constituted that way? I guess it's an infantile paradisal wish in some regard. Couldn't we just be rewarded for who we are? I can understand that. But I don't think that it works. I don't think that's how things function like that. And I don't think probably in the final analysis we really want them to. I don't know if anyone enjoys undeserved reward. You know, it feels kind of creepy, doesn't it, to be rewarded for something you didn't do?
It does. I'm obsessed with this idea of the physics of being human, that there are just certain things that are true, that our brain has algorithms running in them that are going to push us to be striving to, push against entropy, partly just you have to risk danger to go out and get food and provide for your family and keep them safe. So it makes sense that you have that pushing at your back. Also seems to me that you have an innate drive for progress and that you'll never be happy if you're not advancing in some way, getting better at something.
Well, I think that's technically true, and in Maps of Meaning in particular, I make a neuropsychological argument for that mostly based on the work of Jeffrey Gray, who I think was the greatest neuropsychologist of the last half of the 20th century. And he drew a lot of his ideas from Norbert Wiener, who was a cybernetic theorist who was instrumental in the development of artificial intelligence. These ideas have what would you call it, a stellar academic origin. And positive emotion, Gray laid this out better than anyone else, the positive emotion that we find sustaining is experienced in relationship to an unachieved goal. It's hope that drives us forward. We want something, and if we see ourselves moving towards that, then we're in the grip of the positive emotion that we find sustaining. It isn't the attainment. Attainment is satiating. Attainment shuts down the system that has been striving for that particular object of attainment. If you're hungry and you eat, you stop being hungry. Now, that's good because the hunger is gone, but that whole frame disappears. You can no longer strive within that frame, and you need a new frame to strive towards. And so technically, and this is well established as far as I'm concerned, we even know the drugs that people abuse, cocaine, let's say, amphetamines, the ones that are potent sources of positive emotion, activate the system that regulates our emotional response to evidence that we're moving towards a desired goal. So cocaine, for example, is an exhilarating drug. It makes you feel that things are worthwhile because it hijacks the system that does indicate that things are worthwhile. So this is deeply, this striving aspect is deeply rooted in our biology. Do not allow yourself to become resentful, deceitful, or arrogant. It's kind of the evil triad as far as I've been able to determine. Resentment in particular. It's bad. It's a bad emotion. It's useful. You can learn a lot by noticing that it occurs. Resentment tells you one of two things. One is that you're that someone's treading on your territory and something needs to be done about it, or that you need to grow the hell up and stop complaining. And it's hard. It isn't necessarily obvious when you feel resentful which of those it is, but you need to figure it out, because you can harbor resentment for unlived life for a very, very long period of time. And all it does is corrupt you. It hurts you. It hurts you physically because it's a stressful emotion. Anger is a stressful emotion. Because your body hyper prepares for action if you're angry, because you might get into conflict. And that's a dangerous situation. And so you burn off a lot of psychophysiological resources in anger. If you're resentful, there's probably something you need to say. There's certainly something you need to figure out. And so you can use it as a guide to further development. It's very much useful to aim at a resentment-free existence. And that means, I suppose, that you're taking up enough space. There's always a struggle between your domain and the domain of other people. Everyone competes for everyone else's attention. Everyone competes for everyone else's time. You compete for your own time. And if you're resentful, it's highly probable that, well, as I said, either you're not standing up for yourself sufficiently, or someone is legitimately on your case, in which case you need to do something about that. Or, live with the consequences, which is very unpleasant. It's not optimal. Sometimes I suppose it's unavoidable. But, generally there's something that can be done about it. Some things, if you don't address them, they just get worse. And I've been able to see where things are going to go. It's kind of like what I mentioned to you earlier, that if I watch someone, I can generally figure out what they're up to. I also can see where things are going. And so, if I walk into someone's house and there are things out of order in a particular way, if I pay attention to that, that's often indicative of something not right in the relationship. Maybe the kitchen's a mess. It's like there's food that isn't fresh in the fridge, for example, or there's packages up in shelves that haven't been opened for like 2 years, or since the wedding, let's say. That's too much chaos in the kitchen. Something's wrong. Well, what's wrong? Well, there's something wrong in the domestic relationship there. The bargaining about who does what in the kitchen hasn't been fought through. And so you have to have those fights to put things in order. And if you don't, then you end up with a worse fight in the future. And so the reason that I call things out, as far as I can tell, the positive reason, who knows what the negative reasons are, is because I don't want more conflict. I'd rather have genuine peace, which is very, very, very hard to obtain. People generally obtain peace by sweeping things under the carpet. I have another chapter in this new book called Don't Hide Things in the Fog. And that's what it concentrates on, is pay attention to your negative emotions. Resentment particularly, it's so informative. You find out where you're immature. Well, do you want to? Probably not. Who wants to find out that? Or you'll find out who's oppressing you. And maybe then you can learn to stand up for yourself. One of the things I've noticed time and time again is that whenever I talk about the relationship between responsibility and meaning, the crowds that I'm talking to go silent. Say, look, you need a meaning to sustain you through the vicissitudes of life. Okay, well, try to debate that. It's like, is life painful? Yes. Is it anxiety provoking? Yes. Is it uncertain? Yes. Is it painful beyond bearing sometimes? Yes. It's difficult. Everyone agrees about that. Now, they might disagree about how difficult, but that doesn't matter. That the central point holds. Okay. What if you think that's all pointless? Well, that doesn't seem very helpful. Okay, so you need a sustaining meaning. Well, where do you find that? Well, you generally find it in responsibility to yourself and to other people. And people ask themselves those questions when I'm talking, because I ask them to ask themselves those questions, and that's the answer. Well, what's meaningful? Well, I have a meaningful relationship with my father. I have a meaningful relationship with my wife. I have a meaningful relationship with my pet, because I take care of that pet. When I commit to something and make sacrifices, that sacrifice is something I also talk about a lot in both of the last two books. If something's valuable, you'll make sacrifices to attain it. And that discovery of sacrifice, I think that's what separates it's one of the primary factors separating human beings from animals. Because we discovered that we could let go of something we value in the present, and we would gain something we value even more in the future. We acted that out dramatically in all sorts of strange ways over thousands and thousands of years before it was formalizable psychologically. But it's a massive discovery. I can forego gratification in a particular way and benefit in the future. So I can share the proceeds of my hunt. And I store up future food in the form of reputation and the favors I'm owed now by other people. It's a massive discovery.